Most of these videos I can keep pretty short, but this one's going to need the extra run time. That's because instead of talking about a single book, I want to talk about all 6 of these. These were the first 6 manga books that Harlequin published for the American market way back in 2005. They're unique in a number of ways that I think are really interesting, so let's dive in a little bit. First, it's worth doing a bit of a look at Harlequin's relationship with the Japanese culture. As the company exploded in both popularity and size in the 1970s, it began to look for ways to infiltrate other markets because everybody loves a good love story, right? Europe was their natural starting point, given the company's acquisition of London-based Mills and Boon and the extensive network that that company had already put in place. But in 1979, Harlequin looked to make a bigger jump, this time into Asia. They began with market research that showed that Japanese women were willing to read Harlequin books, despite a perceived cultural bias against happy endings. And the company found a local distributor as well as local translators who'd end up shaping the books in really interesting ways. From its European adventures, Harlequin had learned that book translation isn't just about the text, but also the cultural norms of the country that the book is being translated for. In Japan, translators were charged with both making English idioms make sense, but also with making sure that things like expressions of love would feel familiar and comfortable to Japanese readers. Harlequin's growth was slow but steady in the Japanese market through the 80s, but executives had started to wonder if the investment was worth it. The company's typical paperback format was just not as popular among casual readers in Japan, who often turned to manga formats instead. Manga specifically aimed at women was exploding in popularity in the early 1990s, and traditionally slow on the uptake Harlequin finally decided to get in on the trend in 1998, partnering with a Japanese publishing firm to create Japanese-only manga versions of novels that had already been translated. With this, Harlequin finally began to find the foothold it wanted in Japan. Meanwhile, manga was slowly growing in popularity in the US. In 2003, sales of imported books topped $100 million, and they had an upward trend line. Harlequin saw an opportunity now, having already been in the manga market in Japan for several years, to finally be the trendsetter after 2 decades of being followers in romance. And in 2005, they partnered with Dark Horse, which was the most established translator of manga for American audiences, and created Harlequin Ginger Blossom, which is the name of the line in there. And so that's where these come in. Harlequin and Dark Horse created 2 lines, Pink and Violet. Pink was for translation of Harlequin romance-style, chaste, kiss-at-the-end type books, and Violet was for the Harlequin Presents style books that had a little more sensuality. The books maintained the traditional right-to-left manga formatting, but added a really peculiar twist for each book type that's part of the reason I'm so fascinated by them. The pink books are printed in pink ink. You can see that right there. And then the violet books are printed in purple ink. The pink books in particular are a really wild reading experience because, for me at least, I get a headache really quickly from this sort of reddish pink type of ink as well. The purple is a little more readable, but it's still a strange experience. So the initial partnership between Dark Horse and Harlequin only lasted for these 6. After that, Harlequin took over the distribution because they knew romance distribution, and Dark Horse kept doing the translation and packaging. But in 2008, Harlequin partnered with Japanese phone manufacturing conglomerate SB Creative to start producing digital versions of manga, as the technology had started to catch on in Japan. The contract with Dark Horse ended, and SB Creative became the exclusive publisher of Harlequin's manga series. SB Creative is still producing the Harlequin manga, including more than 1,000 titles that have been translated into English. A lot of these are available on places like Amazon or on Libby Overdrive. The other reason I wanted to talk about these books is the translation project involved here. So let's use A Girl in a Million here as an example. So Betty Niels was a British author who wrote more than 100 books for Mills and Boon over a 40-year career. So she submits the manuscript for A Girl in a Million to the Mills and Boon office in London in 1993. It gets published by Mills and Boon, and then the manuscript is sent on to Harlequin in Toronto for them to publish as well. Harlequin then sends the North American version to their Japanese office to be translated for publication there. That office sends the final translated version to Ozora Publishing for them to give their stable of manga writers and artists a chance to adapt it into comic form, into manga form. Then that published edition is handed off to Dark Horse to translate the text of the manga back to English for the US market. Incidentally, all 6 of these Dark Horse titles are translated by the same person. So after that, my question becomes, who's the real author of these 6 books? It's a really wild puzzle because it's just one sort of person after another getting involved in it. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this deeper dive. I'll leave links below to a blog post I've written about this, as well as an excellent essay by Alexi Kattis for Duke University's Unsuitable blog. Please like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below if you have read any of these peculiarly colored manga books.